who would win in your mind? Who's got the best chance to win? Let's assume we're all going to use it every day for 2 hours as our desktop. We're going to put it on. We're going to find workout apps to use, whatever. It's going to become, let's assume, that is.
Well, I think you just answered your own question. In all of these things, when you build hardware, I think you can take a lot of parallels from what happened in the PC space. If you have commoditized PC manufacturers, Compaq, Dell, IBM, right? There are innumerable number, thousands of companies that made PCs. The value created to the application layer, to the operating system. And the people that can actually build ecosystems are typically the ones that win. And the people that already have an ecosystem and all they have to do is port somebody from, platform A to platform B has a meaningful advantage over somebody that has to convince you to come to a new platform altogether. And so, if you're a Microsoft and you have thousands or hundreds of thousands of developers, or if you're Google and you have hundreds of thousands of developers, or if you're Apple and you have millions of developers, it's just a smaller bridge to cross in order to convince them to now build for one extra endpoint.
iOS versus Android,
versus Microsoft. Yeah.
And by the way,
it seems like the obvious transition, whereas like Facebook is like, you got to go build all this stuff.
And Apple made an incredibly important set of decisions a few years ago, which I didn't think a lot of people talked about, but they had an OS tree that was branching far too widely, right? They had a different operating system for the phones. They had a different operating system for iPads, desktop for watches. And they've started to try to converge and shoehorn these things into a set of basic primitives so that it's more controllable. And I suspect the reason is because that gives them more optionality to go into a car, to go into a headset, without having to do an entire developer rebuild.
Even better than that, Chamath, it's a great point you bring up, because they also started investing in their own chipset. And I think all of that chipset innovation gives them a dramatic advantage in having smaller batteries and more processing power in a headset if it does work, which what chip asset does Facebook have? None. So
I don't think we should say that Facebook is down and out, but let's just qualify what we think can win. So that's one thing. The other thing to remember is when you look at the PC industry, how did Intel become so dominant? Part of what Intel was able to do to outcompete AMD and everybody else was that program called Intel Inside, which is effectively these co-marketing pass-through dollars that they would use to actually give an incentive for Dell and for Compaq and for all these other folks to basically build to spec. And that was the Wintel monopoly, right? Microsoft and Intel. If you play that out in VR, what you really need is just a bag full of cash, because if you give developers a subsidized incentive to build for your platform, they'll do it. So then again, if you rank the companies, you just need to look at how much cash do they have, because those with the most cash Google have it. Yeah. So again, I think the best way to think about this is how many developers do you have today? How much cash do you have today? Yep. How much cash will you have in the future? And you can probably rank and just do a reasonable expected value to think about who has the best chance of winning, assuming the platform is roughly equal. Now, if the company on that list with the fewest developers and the least money has a superior device, if that device is superior enough, they can overcome those things.
Right. And Facebook has the least money and Facebook has the least
If you have rough parity, I think the person with the most money and the most developers probably has the best chance of winning.
Sacks, Facebook has the least developers. They have no relationship with developers. In fact, they kind of screwed them over with Facebook Connect a couple times. They have the least money, but they do have the largest user base of profiles. So does that give them some advantage here? And how would you rank who's going to win, who's going to lose?
Well, I think it gives them an advantage to Chamath's framework of porting over their app onto whatever the dominant platform is going to be. But probably it's the operating system players who are probably going to be able to extend their operating system into this new VR AR world. Probably.